Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're getting into something really fundamental, the origins of thinking machines.
Right, and it's maybe not what you'd expect.
Exactly. We think silicon chips, but really, the story of modern AI, machine learning, deep learning, it actually kicks off with these big questions about control, communication, learning.
Yeah, in, well, both living things and artificial systems. It's a surprisingly intertwined history.
And for this deep dive, we've got some great source material. We're looking at excerpts from chun.pdf and Porinyogachi, Kakenyopout Hikiria. Those give us some really detailed historical background.
And also Oyo Ahiro, which is maybe a bit more of a conversational entry point to the early ideas.
Okay, so our mission, our goal here is pretty clear. Unpack cybernetics, these foundational ideas, and really see how they've, rippled through AI and machine learning ever since.
Sounds good. Where should we start?
Well, to get a handle on these early steps, we probably need to talk about a key figure, right?
Absolutely. Norbert Wiener, he's definitely central, a real polymath at MIT, a math prodigy, but incredibly broad in his interests.
Okay, Wiener. And what was the spark? What got him thinking along these specific lines?
Well, interestingly, a lot of it came out of his work during World War II. He was involved in research on anti-aircraft gunnery control, automating that process.
Military tech.
Right. And through that, he started seeing these common principles, how you control goal-oriented behavior, whether it's in a machine trying to hit a target or potentially in a living organism.
So finding the common ground between aiming a gun and, say, how an animal behaves.
Exactly. These fundamental mechanisms of control and feedback, he abstracted it.
That's quite a jump.
It really was. And it all sort of crystallized in his 1948 book, Cybernetics, or Controlling Communication in the Animal and the Machine. Huge deal. Really laid the groundwork.
Cybernetics. Okay, that title alone tells you a lot. But the word itself, cybernetics, where did that come from? It sounds, very technical.
It does now, maybe. But he drew it from the Greek word kybernetes.
Which means?
Steersman, like someone steering a ship.
Ah, okay, that makes sense. Steering, controlling.
Precisely.
Right.
He wanted to emphasize the study of self-regulating mechanisms, how systems maintain their course, adjust to changes, steer themselves.
So self-regulation, that's the heart of it. What were the core concepts he laid out in that book?
Well, several key things. First, obviously, control and communication. That's right there in the title. How do systems, biological, mechanical, even social ones, manage themselves and interact? It's all about information flow.
Information flow allowing for self-regulation. How does that work mechanically?
That brings us to feedback loops. This is absolutely crucial. It's the idea that a system's output isn't just the end of the line.
Okay.
That output circles back, becomes input, and influences what the system does next. It's a continuous loop of action and information.
Right. Like a thermostat. That's the classic example, isn't it?
Exactly. It measures the room temperature. That's the output of the room's current state, in a way. And that measurement feeds back into the thermostat to decide, turn the heat on, turn it off, affecting the future temperature.
And this applies to living things, too.
Oh, absolutely. It's called homeostasis in biology. Think about your body temperature. Too hot, you sweat. Sweating cools you down. The output, sweating, feeds back to regulate the system, your temperature.
Okay, got it. Feedback loops are key. What else was Wiener digging into?
He was also working on information theory, actually around the same time as Claude Shannon, though independently.
Really? Shannon's more famous for that, I suppose.
He often gets more credit, yeah. But Wiener was deeply exploring information, too. Its connection to entropy, disorder and noise in communication, how information gets transmitted, how it can be corrupted.
So the quantitative side of information.
Yes, and he used some serious math, like time series analysis, to get at it. But he also made these really interesting animal-machine analogies. He saw parallels in how nervous systems process information and control actions, and how early computers worked. He speculated about machine memory, learning, even famously psychotic calculators.
Psychotic calculators. What did he mean by that?
Haha, yeah, memorable phrase. I think he was hinting at the potential for complex systems, even calculating machines, to malfunction in ways that resemble psychological issues, getting stuck in loops, processing information incorrectly. It kind of foreshadows our modern worries about AI bias or unexpected behavior, doesn't it?
It really does. Wow. So this book, Cybernetics, it sounds like it landed with a huge impact.
Massive, across so many fields. Servo mechanisms, automatic navigation, analog computing, early AI ideas, neuroscience, communication theory. It was truly interdisciplinary. It forced people in different silos to see common ground.
And you mentioned social systems earlier. Was he already thinking about the broader societal stuff back then?
He absolutely was. That's really important. Wiener was deeply concerned about the social and ethical side. Automation in jobs, wealth distribution, the power of media, propaganda. He wrote more about this in The Human Use of Human Beings. For you listening, it's crucial to realize these AI ethics debates we're having now. They have roots way back here. Wiener saw it coming.
That is remarkably prescient, thinking about automation's impact in the late 1940s.
Exactly. The responsibility that comes with powerful technology. Those questions were baked in from the beginning.
Which I suppose highlights the need for different perspectives, different disciplines talking to each other.
Definitely. And that leads us perfectly into the next key piece of the puzzle, the Macy conferences.
Right, the Macy conferences. I've heard of those. They were a big deal for cybernetics, too.
Oh, absolutely essential. They ran from 1946 to 1953 in New York, 10 meetings in total, funded by the Josiah Macy Jr. Foundation.
And the goal wasn't just cybernetics, was it? It was broader.
The specific goal was fostering communication between disciplines, trying to break down those academic silos, especially in human and medical sciences, get people talking who normally wouldn't.
Who was involved?
Yeah.
Was Wiener there?
He was. Along with a really stellar, diverse group, you had mathematicians like John von Neumann, neurophysiologists like Warren McCulloch and Walter Pitts, who were key organizers too, with Frank Fremont Smith from the Foundation.
Okay.
Then anthropologists Gregory Bateson and Margaret Mead, Claude Shannon with his information theory. Just a remarkable mix of minds.
Wow. That's like an all-star team of mid-century intellectuals.
Yeah.
What were the meetings actually like? Formal presentations?
No, actually, they were deliberately informal, more about discussing works in progress, batting ideas around, challenging each other, not just presenting finished papers.
And they shared the discussions?
They did. They published transcripts, the Macy transactions, which helped spread the ideas even further.
So what kinds of things were they hashing out? What were the hot topics?
Well, naturally, feedback and this idea of circular causality, how things influence each other in loops, were central, building on Wiener stuff.
Makes sense.
Information theory was huge, obviously, with Shannon there. They debated it, tried to expand it, maybe connect it more to meaning, not just bits.
And the brain itself, were they trying to model it?
Definitely. Neural networks were a big topic. McCulloch and Pitts had their model of neurons as simple on-off switches.
The logical calculus of neurons.
That's the one, which was foundational for thinking about computation in the brain. And there were debates. Was the brain digital, like their model, or more analog? Homeostasis, that biological self-regulation we talked about, ideas about reflexivity, how the observer is part of the system started to surface, though that became more central later in second-order cybernetics.
Okay.
And things like language, memory, learning, even critiques of things like Gestalt psychology. It was a real melting pot.
It sounds incredibly fertile, laying the groundwork for, well, a lot.
Exactly. These conferences were pivotal not just for cybernetics, but really for systems theory in general, and eventually cognitive science. They helped to bring the concept of the mind back as a legitimate scientific subject when behaviorism was, really dominant.
But it couldn't have been all smooth sailing, getting mathematicians and anthropologists and psychiatrists to speak the same language.
Oh, absolutely not. That was a major challenge. And the conferences really highlighted it. Disciplinary divides, misunderstandings. The dream of a single universal scientific language didn't quite pan out. There were definite tensions sometimes.
So the value wasn't necessarily total agreement.
No, I think the real value was in the exchange, the friction, the different perspectives bumping up against each other. That's what sparked new ideas, even if they didn't create one unified science of everything. It influenced all these different fields profoundly.
Okay, so cybernetics provides this framework. Macy conferences spread the ideas. How does this connect directly to AI and machine learning as we think of them today?
Well, cybernetics, with its focus on feedback, information processing, those brain-machine analogies, it was direct inspiration.
The building blocks.
Pretty much. Those core concepts, feedback, learning through adjusting based on output, treating the brain as an information processor, became foundational for later learning algorithms and designing intelligent systems. People like Alan Turing were certainly aware of and influenced by these cybernetic ideas.
So cybernetics was the launchpad, but AI and ML became distinct fields, right? They didn't just stay under the cybernetics umbrella.
That's a really interesting point. In a way, cybernetics was almost too broad. Because it covered so much ground, it's sort of disintegrated as a single field.
How do you mean?
As researchers focused on more specific problems and applications, more specialized fields emerged. Artificial intelligence, computer science, control systems engineering, they branched off. The 1956 Dartmouth workshop is often seen as a key moment where AI really defined itself separately, initially with a stronger focus on symbolic logic and reasoning.
Kind of like Adam Smith's division of labor, but for science. Specialization for progress.
That's a good analogy, yeah. To make practical progress, maybe that narrowing of focus was necessary. The grand, unified vision of cybernetics was powerful, but perhaps unwieldy for building specific things.
But the core ideas didn't just vanish when the label became less common.
Not at all. They've kept bubbling up. In the 60s, you got second-order cybernetics, looking more at the observer's role, social systems, ecology.
Okay.
And I think about today, the huge resurgence of artificial neural networks in machine learning, that's a direct echo in many ways of those early cybernetic ideas about interconnected, brain-like learning systems.
Huh. It's like we're rediscovering some of those roots.
There's definitely an element of that. And the principles, feedback, control, information, that's still applied all over the place. Human-computer interaction, complex systems design, management theory, analyzing social networks.
And the ethical questions Wiener raised.
Still incredibly relevant, maybe more than ever with the power of today's AI.
It really shows the lasting power of those initial insights.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this up. What are the big takeaways from this journey back to cybernetics?
I think the main things are cybernetics laid down these really fundamental principles: control, communication, feedback. These were critical for how AI and ML later developed.
Right, the intellectual DNA almost.
Exactly. And the Macy conferences were crucial for spreading and developing these ideas through that intense interdisciplinary conversation.
Even with the difficulties.
Even with the difficulties, yes. While cybernetics itself branched out, dissolved into more specialized fields, those core concepts, and importantly, Wiener's early ethical concerns, they remain vital for understanding where we are now with intelligent machines.
It's been fascinating tracing these threads back. Really puts today's AI landscape in a much deeper context.
Absolutely. History matters here. So here's a final thought for you listening. Given that initial focus on control and communication in both biological and artificial systems and Wiener's early ethical flags, how could really understanding the cybernetic principles help us navigate the challenges of AI today? What aspects of self-regulation, of feedback that we see in nature, could they inspire more robust, maybe more ethical AI? Something to chew on. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.